Don't Turn on the Light by S. E. Schlosser. Narrated by Ansley of Horror Alley. She commandeered the room in the basement of her dorm as soon as she realized that she would have to pull an all-nighter in order to prepare for tomorrow's final exam. Her roommate, Jenna, liked to go to bed early, so she packed up everything she thought she would need and went downstairs to study, and study, and study some more. It was 2 o'clock when she realized that she left one of her textbooks upstairs on her bed. With a dramatic sigh, she rose and climbed the stairs slowly to her third-floor dorm room. The lights were dim in the long hallway, and the old boards creaked under her weary tread. She reached her room and turned the handle as softly as she could, pushing the door open just enough to slip inside, so the hall lights wouldn't awake her roommate. The room was filled with a strange metallic smell. She frowned a bit, her arms breaking out into chills. There was a strange feeling of malice in the room, as if a malevolent gaze were fixed upon her. It was a mind trick. The all-nighter was catching up with her. She could hear Jenna breathing on the far side of the room, a heavy sound, almost as if she'd been running. Jenna must have picked up a cold during the last tense week before finals. She crept along the wall until she reached her bed, groping among the covers for her stray history textbook. In the silence, she could hear a steady dripping sound. She sighed gently. Facilities would have to come to fix the sink in the bathroom, again. Her fingers closed on the textbook. She picked it up softly and withdrew from the room as silently as she could. Relieved to be out of the room, she hurried back downstairs, collapsed into an overstuffed chair, and studied until 6 o'clock. She finally decided that enough was enough. If she slipped upstairs now, she could get a couple hours of sleep before her 9 o'clock exam. The first of the sun's rays were beaming through the windows as she slowly slid the door open, hoping to not awaken Jenna. Her nose was met by an earthy, metallic smell, and a second before her eyes registered the scene in her dorm room. Jenna was spread-eagled on the top of her bed against the far wall, her throat cut from ear to ear and her nightdress stained with blood. 2 drops of blood fell from the saturated blanket with a drip-drip noise that sounded like a leaky faucet. Scream after scream poured from her mouth, but she couldn't stop herself any more than she could cease wringing her hands. All along the hallway, doors slammed and footsteps came running down the passage. Within moments, other students had gathered in the doorway, and one of her friends gripped her arm with a shaking hand and pointed a trembling finger towards the wall. Her eyes widened in shock at what she saw. Then she fainted into her friend's arms. On the wall above her bed, written in her roommate's blood, were the words, "Aren't you glad you didn't turn on the light?" This is Axe Murder Hollow, excerpted from Spooky Pennsylvania, by S. E. Schlosser, performed by Ansley of Horror Alley. Susan and Ned were driving through a wooded, empty section of highway. Lightning flashed, thunder roared, and the sky went dark in the torrential downpour. "We'd better stop," said Susan. Ned nodded his head quickly in agreement. He stepped on the brake, and suddenly the car started to slide onto the slick pavement. They plunged off the road and slid to a halt at the bottom of an incline. Pale and shaking, Ned quickly turned to check if Susan was all right. When she nodded, Ned relaxed and looked through the rain-soaked windows. "I'm going to go see how bad it is," he told Susan, and went out into the storm. She saw his blurry figure in the headlight, walking around in front of the car. A moment later, he jumped in beside her, soaking wet. "The car's not badly damaged, but we're wheel-deep in mud," he said. "I'm going to have to go for help." Susan swallowed nervously. There would be no quick rescue here. He told her to turn off the headlights and lock down the doors until he returned. Axe Murder Hollow. Although Ned hadn't said the name aloud, they both know what he had been thinking when he told her to lock the car. This was the place where a man had once taken an axe and hacked his wife to death in a jealous rage over an alleged affair. Supposedly, the axe-wielding spirit of the husband continued to haunt this section of the road. Outside the car, Susan had heard a shriek, a loud thump, and a strange gurgling noise, but she could not see anything into the darkness. Frightened, she shrank down into her seat. She sat in silence for a while, but then she noticed another sound. Bump, bump, bump. It was a soft sound, like something being blown by the wind. Suddenly, the car was illuminated by a bright light. An official-sounding voice told her to get out of the car. Ned must have found a police officer. Susan unlocked the door and stepped out of the car. As her eyes adjusted to the bright light, she saw it. Hanging by his feet from the tree next to the car was the dead body of Ned. His bloody throat had been cut so deeply that he was nearly decapitated. His wind swung his corpse back and forth so that it thumped against the tree. Bump, bump, bump. Susan screamed and ran toward the voice and the light. As she drew close, she realized that the light was not coming from a flashlight. Standing there was the glowing figure of a man with a smile on his face and a large, solid, and definitely real axe in his hand. She backed away from the glowing figure until she bumped into the car. "Playing around while my back was turned," the ghost whispered, stroking the sharp blade of the axe with his fingers. "You've been very naughty." The last thing she saw was the glint of the axe blade in the eerie, incandescent light.
By Brad from Horror Alley. My son wanted me to tell this story. This is 100% true. I'm not going to exaggerate it for the sake of the video. I'm just going to tell you the truth. This is what made me a 100% believer in the paranormal. The way I am and the way I've always been is I don't believe anything until I see it with my own eyes. So I always liked the paranormal and stuff like that, but I wasn't sure if I 100% believed it because I never had really any experiences other than just like casual things here and there. Well, I know this really happened because I wasn't the only one that saw it at the same time. Anyway, where we live, it's an apartment. There's an apartment upstairs. It's a house, I should say. There's an apartment upstairs and an apartment downstairs. We live in the downstairs. We lived in the upstairs for a few months before the bottom became vacant. Anyway, we moved down. When we lived up there, my girlfriend always, she says she's very like a magnet for this kind of stuff. She says I always experience stuff and blah blah blah, and so whatever. And she tells me different things, and she's not really one to like make up stuff at all. So when we moved down here, my girlfriend and my son both said that they were hearing things, and different weird stuff was happening. So, me being a skeptic, I just told him basically, whatever, you guys are just doing it for attention. I thought my son was just saying it to back her up, to make it look good, like, oh yeah, huh? But, so, kind of shrugged it off. Well, one night, me and my son, it was probably like around 1:45 in the morning in the summertime, so there wasn't any school. We were watching a show, and my daughter and my son, depending on who's out there at the time, one of them will usually fall asleep in the living room somewhere. And so at night you'll see them run by real quick, because from my room, if you look out the door, there's a hallway, a real short hallway, but you can see into the kitchen. So that little hallway, you see people run by real quick, my son and my daughter. Well, one night, me and my son were here watching a movie, and we saw my daughter run by real fast. But the only thing is she had on a white nightgown, and I've never really, maybe once when she was younger, seen my daughter with a white nightgown, and her hair was um, straighter than my daughter's, and I didn't see like the face. Like when I turned, I saw from half the body on, real fast. But it was definitely somebody my daughter's size, looked like same age, female. So I thought it was my daughter. So here I'm looking out, and usually you'll see the kitchen light go on and then the bathroom light. Well, I didn't see either one go on. And I looked at my son, and I said, "Did you see that?" And he said, "Layla just ran by to go to the bathroom." And I said, "But she didn't turn on the lights." So me and him both got up, and we thought she was, maybe went back in the living room to go to sleep. And we went and looked in the living room, and she wasn't in the living room. My daughter was asleep in the back room. To get to her room, you have to go through my room. So she didn't walk by us or anything. So we kind of looked at each other and were like, "Oh my God, what did we just see? That wasn't Layla, obviously." And I didn't tell him what I saw. I just said, "Did you see that?" And he told me what he saw. And I said, "Describe." And he said, "I thought it was Layla." And he described the hair and the nightgown. So that was pretty creepy. And, at that point, it really made me a believer, and I felt kind of bad for ever doubting anyone or making fun of them or, giving my son and my wife a hard time about it. There was also another time when I was here. It was around 2:30 in the morning, I remember. And I was watching TV, and the door was open again, and the lights in the kitchen and the bathroom were off. And I saw my daughter run by again, and the lights didn't go on again, so I kind of knew. So I just woke my girlfriend up, and just had her like stay awake for a minute and told her what was going on. But she's also seen the same thing. She said, she really never told me, and I asked her, "What did you see?" And she explained what she saw, and it was exactly what I saw. And I don't drink, and I wasn't high, so I was, a huge skeptic. I always liked paranormal stuff and stuff like that, but you're a skeptic about it till you ever see something like that, and I didn't know if I'd ever see anything. But that was about 7 months ago, and nothing has happened since then. So I don't know if it was just she wanted us to know she was here and who was here, but it's not mean so far, or violent or anything. But yeah, that's the story that made me a 100% believer in the paranormal, from being a total skeptic to total believer. And I don't believe everybody's story. That's why on this channel we're gonna try to. My son wants to keep it as true stories as we can, So we're gonna try to do that, and some creepypastas and stuff like that too, and some not true stories are just really scary and worth telling. So, but most part we're gonna try to keep it to true stories. So, thanks everybody. If you liked it, Kids 12, it's his channel. Thumbs up, subscribe, share it. He's gonna be putting up about 3 or 4 videos a week, consistent. So any ideas, email. Any experiences, email them here on YouTube. We also have a Facebook page, Horror Alley. So look it up on Facebook. I'll put the links in the description. And thanks everybody. Have a good night.